May 29, 1453. The sun had not yet risen. Constantinople was awake. But this was not the awakening of a city. It was the silence that follows a night whose end is already known. No one expected victory. Hope of salvation was almost gone. Everyone was left with the same question: would the city fall today? Or would history delay itself for one more day? But history does not like to wait. Constantinople was not an ordinary city. It carried the weight of an entire era. The last capital of Rome, the eastern stronghold of the Christian world, the final gate between East and West. These walls were not made of stone alone. They upheld an entire order. As long as Constantinople stood, the old world stood with it. But no order can resist time forever. The sound outside the city was not just the sound of an army. It was the footsteps of a new age. This conquest was not an ambition. It was a necessity. Without Constantinople, no empire could be considered complete. That is why the Ottomans waited for months. That is why cannons were cast. That is why retreat was never considered. This was not a siege. It was a reckoning. Inside the city, hope was weak, but surrender was absent. The soldiers were few. Resources were exhausted. It was known that no help would come. Still, the walls were not abandoned. Because some wars are not fought to win, but to refuse defeat. This was the final defense of an empire, silent, isolated, but honorable. Yet an honorable stand does not always change the course of history. When morning came, the silence was shattered. The cannon spoke. The walls collapsed. The city trembled. When there was no wall left to defend, history entered the city. Constantinople fell. This was not a single moment. It was the weight of centuries. When the gates of Hagia Sophia were opened, it was not just a city that closed. An entire era did. The fall of Constantinople was more than a victory for the Ottomans. It was the moment a state stepped beyond its region and onto the world stage. No longer was the Ottoman power confined to Anatolia or the Balkans. It now stood upon the legacy of Rome itself. This city did not grant only territory. It granted legitimacy. It granted weight. It secured a place in history. A power that took Constantinople could no longer be ignored. For the East, the Ottomans became central. For the West, they became a new and unavoidable reality. With this conquest, the Ottomans were no longer defending history. They were standing at its center. And that center could not exist without affecting the rest of the world. The conquest did not end there. Its true impact unfolded over time. Europe was shaken. Knowledge shifted. the old order began to unravel. As the Middle Ages receded, a new era emerged. Trade routes closed. Europe was pushed toward the seas. The path to new continents was opened. A city fell, and the world was forced to search for new paths. Istanbul still stands, but it is no longer just a city. It is a threshold, a warning, a turning point. On May 29, 1453, the walls were destroyed. But what truly collapsed was the old world's sense of certainty. And perhaps the truth is this: the world changes most in moments that are unavoidable. Did 1453 change the world, or reveal where it was already heading? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow us and like the video for more stories like this.